Hey everybody, welcome to the Bridge Community Garden, and I'm gonna fill another bed. It was so much fun to do the first two that I thought I would show it to you again. This time I have another ingredient. May or may not go well, but we'll see. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But this is gonna be a beat the clock version of Bridge Community Garden filling a raised bed, because we're supposed to get some thunderstorms, and I'd love to get this all in and laid out before the thunderstorms arrive. Just so we can capture that nice soaking rain, and what that'll do is that rain will just get in there and settle everything down. This bed here is going to be a tea bed, and what I mean by that is we're going to focus on plants that are really good for herbal teas. So chamomile, lemon balm, all that kind of good stuff. So, but the first thing we have to do is get the bed filled. I actually have some lemon balm, some echinacea, some mint cuttings that are rooting right now. So if I can get this bed laid and give it a few days to get settled and get that microbiology going, that'll get time for the roots to get going on those cuttings, and we'll be able to get those transplanted. But for now, we've got to get this filled. So the first thing we're going to do that we learned on the second bed was to lay some cardboard. Alright, so when you're first laying a no-dig garden, it's really important that you get really good coverage of that cardboard. You don't want any gaps. If there's any gaps between the flaps or there's any holes in the cardboard and you don't get that covered, that is a place where your weeds are going to come through right away. Since we're not really going for weed suppression here because we already have cardboard and wood chips, this is really just to make sure that when we water, it just doesn't go straight through, because all that's under there is about 8 inches of wood chips. So anytime we water, if we didn't have that cardboard there, we would just lose all that water right away. So I'm not really worried about gaps so much here as just trying to keep a little bit of a barrier for the water just for now. The cardboard will eventually break down, but by that time the wood chips underneath it will have broken down and they will have compacted a little bit as well, so won't be an issue anymore. Next up is some good filler wood. This old firewood has been sitting on the ground. It's been collecting all kinds of critters and microbes, so this is a perfect filler for the bottom of the bed. Not only will it take up space, it will introduce microbiology, it'll be a habitat for fungi, but it'll also act like a sponge, and as it breaks down, it will hold on to moisture and feed the plants in the future. This does take a while, so in hugelkultur, it is kind of a long game to put logs like this size in here, but for us, for a raised bed that we're trying to fill cheaply, it's a good idea. Now those big log pieces are good, but what we really need is some of the small pieces of wood from the property to fill in the gaps and just fill in around those logs. If you were doing an in-ground bed and you wanted to use this hugelkultur principle, you weren't doing a raised bed, there's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could either create a mound with the logs, or even better, you kind of dig a bit of a trench and you lay the bigger pieces of wood down in the trench, and then you build up your mound on top of that. about 98 degrees out here right now, so a little warm and muggy. But I love doing this. Now at this point, the raised bed's actually looking pretty full. Minus the gaps around the wood, it's almost 3/4 full. So you do have to start thinking a little bit about actually planting it, how your plants are going to fit, and you want to make sure you stuff it really well. So when I put some of the smaller stuff like the soil and compost and leaves, I use my fingers kind of like a claw, and I try to push it down into those gaps because the roots of the plants don't like air gaps. Basically, air is used in gardening and especially seed starting as a pruning mechanism. So you'll hear about air pruning, and that's because when roots hit air, they will stop growing. So we don't want a whole bunch of big air pockets in there. So we're going to try and fill that with the smaller stuff, get in there around those logs. But we are starting to get pretty full. So what I'm going to do now is, Billy actually had a bag of lawn clippings that he did, and he saved them for me. That was really sweet. And I honestly wasn't sure where to use them or how to use them or if I was going to use them until today, when I realized that would be great to put in this raised bed. So just before I came on camera, I opened that up and got it ready, and we definitely have some kind of micro critters growing in there. I'm not sure what they are. They kind of look like roly-polies, but I don't think they are. Roly-polies I would be worried about because those eat plant roots. I don't think these are roly-polies. So in the interest of maximum microdiversity in the soil, I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to go ahead and put these in there. Maybe what I'll do is do a quick little insert video so you can see what they are if I can capture some. Okay, totally gross. They're not maggots. I don't think they're roly-polies. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in. That is a bag of wet grass clippings that has been laying there for at least a couple of weeks. So the moisture and the wetness was just apparently a perfect breeding ground. And but I'm hoping it'll be a perfect breeding ground for the base of our raised bed too. Okay, I'm going in. Basically, as wet and as gross as this is, it's pretty much just green manure. This is always sad to see trash floated into the pile. All right, so that was just, since that was grass clippings, that was just a lot of nitrogen that I just added to that. So we want to balance that out. You always want to layer your nitrogen or your greens with your carbon, which is your browns. So I actually have a bag of leaves, and I think I've said this before, but if you are using big leaves, then you're better off running them through the lawnmower or chopping them up. But since these are small leaves from a live oak, I can just pour them right in. All right, we got our dry leaves and our carbon. Now on the other beds, I actually went around the property and I just grabbed handfuls of, I hate to call them weeds, because really weeds is just plants that are planted where you don't want them. In a lot of contexts, these are just called wildflowers. So what I did is I just went around and grabbed handfuls. Since I did that rotting grass clippings in there, I don't need as much green because that is a lot of nitrogen already. So I'm gonna go get a little bit, but just do a really thin layer on this one. All right, so here is a handful of wildflowers just grabbed from the surrounding area. And you know what's funny is everybody's talking about how do you get ladybugs into your garden, and even ordering ladybugs off Amazon. Not pointing any fingers, I've done it. It was actually a blast to release them, but they were all gone within a couple of days. What I've heard is a lot of the ladybugs that you can order, they weren't raised in the right habitat on the right food, and they're just gonna leave when they come. You're much better off attracting them naturally, and almost every other plant I grabbed had a ladybug on it. So that's the way to do it. Hopefully you can still hear me because all of a sudden a mower just showed up next door. I'm gonna give this a try, but I'll edit it out if it doesn't work. This plant here is in our wildflowers on the side of the garden here. Now, this very well could be chamomile. It looks very similar to it. I plan to plant chamomile in here. The problem is I don't know if it is, and it looks so similar to chamomile that I don't want to be confused and always be wondering if it is. So on the off chance, on the likely chance that it's not, I'm going to make sure I don't put this in the raised bed, because all these greens are going to be fairly near the surface this time. So I made a little bit of an extra effort not to grab anything that might have gone to seed, because it's not getting buried as deeply in this bed, and there could be a chance of me just planting a whole bunch of wildflower seeds. So anyway, as much as this looks like the chamomile that I'm about to plant, this is going to get tossed aside. Okay, so we have our logs, we have our wood, we have our gross rotting grass clippings, we have our leaves, and now we have just a little bit more of a live green layer. One of the reasons I wanted to put just a little bit of a live green layer on there is because all of these wildflowers leaves have indigenous or local microorganisms on them. So they're microorganisms, beneficial ones, that we already know thrive in this area because they're on all these plants already. So by putting just a small layer of this fresh greenery from around here in the bed, I'm inoculating the bed with those organisms. So one of the things I learned on the last couple of beds is I mixed some of my favorite potting mix with some mushroom compost, and I mixed it up in the wheelbarrow and then I filled it. The potting mix, it's designed, I mean, it's great potting mix. I like the Ocean Forest by Fox Farm. It's a little bit expensive, so it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I just really like it because it's natural and it has a lot of really great stuff in it that makes really, really healthy plants. But what I found is as a potting mix, it dries out really quickly, even with the vermiculite and stuff that they put in it. So this time, this is what I love about growing food, is every time you do something, you learn a little bit more. So this time, I'm actually going to put the potting mix straight on the bed, and then I'm going to put the mushroom compost on top. The mushroom compost won't dry out as quickly, I'm thinking, and it'll act like a bit of a mulch, and then I'll still do the sifted wood chips on the very top. But I'm going to wait until all my seeds are planted before I put the sifted wood chips on, just to make sure that they get a good start. And you know what, even as I'm saying that, I want to keep that soil moist, so I may go ahead and put the sifted wood chips on right away. So next up is potting mix or any kind of garden soil raised bed filler that you might want to use. If you are doing this as a no dig on the ground garden, you're not doing a raised bed, then this is the point right over top of your cardboard where you would want to put your compost. And depending on what you're planting, if you're just planting some shallow rooted crops, you could get away with 3 or 4 inches thick worth of compost and just plant straight into that. If you're direct seeding, then depending on how hard your soil is underneath the cardboard, by the time those roots need to get down there, the cardboard could be broken down enough that they'll just burrow down. Sometimes if your soil is really, really compacted and hard, then they may get through that cardboard, but then they might just spread out and be really shallow rooted that first year. But the longer you do it, the more the microbes get down in the soil, the more the earthworms start breaking everything down. You'll actually find that that fluffy layer gets deeper and deeper and deeper if you're doing this on the ground. So just something to keep in mind, but I'm going to go ahead and put the potting soil in now. Oops. I lied. I didn't mean to lie, but I lied. I forgot that I had a whole bunch of leaf mold and soil that I brought to put in this bed, and it is leaf mold, it's soil, it's got great organic material, so I definitely want to put that down before the potting soil. It's in the bucket and I forgot that I had it, so let's go ahead and get that in first. Alright, if you're wondering, okay Shylo, where the heck do I get leaf mold and this kind of soil? Compost soil, leaf mold, it's kind of all the same. The best place to get it, if you can, is find somewhere near you that is kind of overgrown forest, something that's been kind of neglected, hasn't been trimmed in a long time, there's been a lot of leaves falling, there's maybe even like a layer of leaves a couple of inches thick. That is where you're going to find your best leaf mold, and as long as it hasn't been sprayed with any kind of herbicides or anything like that, that is going to be ideal for you to use as a layer in your garden. Just remember, more than likely there's going to be some poison ivy or some poison oak in there if it's a neglected area or kind of wild. So make sure that you wear protection, make sure that you strip your clothes off and wash really well. The best advice I heard is, imagine you are walking through black grease that is invisible. because that is what the resin from poison oak and poison ivy is like. It's as hard to get off as grease. So you want a really strong soap and you want to scrub really hard to get it off. So I have been really fortunate. I think I mentioned to you guys that I've been kind of going through this area, picking wildflowers, doing the compost piles, and I said that I wouldn't know poison ivy or poison oak if it reached out and bit me. But I did decide that I probably should look it up and figure out what it looks like. And some of the areas that I've been pulling from are loaded with it. I'm not sure if I've just been really, really lucky, or apparently there's about 10 to 15% of the population that doesn't react to it. So I don't know if maybe I'm one of them, or I've just been really, really lucky. But if you go scrounging for some good leaf mold at the base of a wild grown area, just wear some protection. This is what that fox farm looks like, fox farm, ocean forest. Around here, I know you can get it at Russell Feed. It is, like I said, a little bit more expensive. You can definitely get raised bed filler, compost for a little bit less. I'm just kind of a sucker for this stuff. It's very fine. It's very fine and it has a lot of vermiculite in it, but I'm realizing in these raised beds with the other beds that I've done is it dries out pretty quickly. So I think that's a combination of the water going through because of the wood chips underneath and the soil and the hot direct sun. So putting the mushroom compost on top and then mulching it with the sifted wood chips I think will help a lot. I do not want any grass seed in there. So I'm just using my fingers to push this down as much as I can into those crevices. As much as I'm pushing all that down with my fingers, one of the reasons I wanted to get this done tonight, which it kind of looks like it's clearing up, but if a good soaking rain would help as well. So if we don't get any rain, then what I'll probably do is come back and put 2 or 3 buckets of water on this just to really get everything to settle in. Now I'll do a close-up video so you can see. because there's quite a bit larger chunks. So where you saw that potting mix was really fluffy, that's ideal for seeds. The compost has a little bit bigger chunks, but it's, sorry, I just put compost all over my face, but it's not bad enough that I don't think it's going to be a problem for the seedlings. But if you notice how black it is, that's a good thing. Black compost is really good, but it's also going to heat up a lot, so it could scorch really young plants. So I definitely am going to do the sifted wood chip mulch on top. So you can see we're not just filling up a raised bed with dirt. I want you to think about it, and the people that grow the best, healthiest, most nutritious, not only the healthiest food, but also the healthiest plants that are most resistant to pests, most disease resistant, they understand that they are planting into a ecosystem, not just dirt. So underneath what we see here, when all that microbiology and the fungi get going, do you know that fungi actually talks to each other? It actually helps plants talk to each other. So the fungi builds up, it's called mycorrhizal fungi, and it builds up around the roots and it starts to spread. And in the wild, things like trees and all the shrubs and different plants actually communicate with each other and tell each other what they need through this mycorrhizal fungi network. So you are not just filling something with dirt, or if you're creating a bed, you're not just tilling up some dirt. Please don't till, because this ecosystem that you're trying to build, which is bacteria and arthropods and fungi and earthworms and all these things that communicate and work together, tilling actually disrupts that. It's like a bulldozer coming through their city. So this is going to be really corny, but if you know me, that comes with the territory. But I was thinking about it as I was filling up the watering can. It seemed kind of perfect, because at the bridge, we're all about building connections. We always say that connection is greater than correction, because it's through true connection, through true relationship, through true communication and real and genuine communication that builds health and vitality and strength. And we communicate with each other, tell each other what we need, and share our resources. And so I just thought that was a really cool analogy that seemed really fitting for the Bridge Community Garden. So right now, this is done until I have a few more roots on those tea plants, but this is going to be the new Bridge Community Garden tea bed. So I've been learning so many cool things about herbal teas, and not just how delicious they are and how relaxing and all that stuff, but how good they are for you too. So I'm excited to get those things planted, and I'll show that to you later. And then a little bit later, hopefully this week, I'm going to have a quick, either a quick video or a short showing you the progress on the compost pile, because it's been really cool this week. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and like every YouTuber always says, you can help us out by subscribing and liking. And don't forget to watch for our live stream on Sunday. Our service is at 10 o'clock Central, just one service during the summer. And that one service is live streamed on Facebook and our YouTube channel. So I hope you'll tune in. Remember, connection is greater than connection. And I hope we'll see you out in the Bridge Community Garden.